Hello and welcome back to another episode of Only a Bag Gear Review videos. In this episode, we're going to talk about the Lems Primal 2s. Very quickly, I just want to mention a couple things. I am in a different location. Doesn't change anything for you all, except for the fact I'm now sweating instead of shivering. So I guess there's a bonus there. And I'm also using a wide angle lens on the iPhone 11. So I haven't used it before. I'm not sure how it works as far as like the vignetting on the corners or any warping effect. But I'm hoping it works because I'm in a much smaller, more limited space. So I needed to use wide angle. And I figured what a perfect opportunity. Now, without any further ado, the Lems Primal 2s. The first thing I do want to mention is what some of the stuff I found on them when I was reading through reviews, watching videos. Because I can't just buy a pair of shoes these days. I unfortunately have to find every single word that's been written about them to make sure that my purchase is well deserved. And a lot of people had overwhelmingly positive feedback on the Primal 2s. There are a few comments, and mainly they kind of boil down to a great pair of shoes for 2 to 3 years. If you wear them really hard and abuse them with like trail running, if you're landscaping in them, if you're using them for like, I know a lot of one-bag travelers like to have a pair of shoes that can get wet, dry, deserts, sharp rocks, broken glass, volcanoes, and then they tend to break down a little bit quicker. On the other end of the spectrum, people who use them only for like working at the office, biking to work, walking around, running errands, they tend to find that they last about 4 to 5 years. So either way, I think I'm feeling really confident with the lifespan of the shoe, given the fact it's not going to fall apart in about 3 to 6 months. The other thing I want to mention is this is going to be more of a first impression video. I typically like to review things that I've owned for a couple months to a couple years. I find that I can really learn where the product kind of falls apart after that length of time, and what things really start to bug me and which circumstances, which situations, and then which, I guess, features I thought would be useless at the beginning, but ended up being really useful once I started owning the product. So this is more of a first impressions, what I think right out of the box, because I just arrived to the States, and one of the first things I did was purchase a pair of these during their recent sale. So with all that being said, let's jump right into it. First thing I want to talk about the shoe is the sizing of the shoe. They don't do half sizes, they only do full sizes. This might not be an issue for you. I'm still trying to find my shoe size. I know everybody does a slightly different shoe size. I have 10.5 Clarks that are a little bit big on me. I have an 11.5 Converse that are big on me, but I have 11.5 Boulder boots that are actually a little bit tight. Sandals can just go either way. I have, Birkenstocks and Tevas in the exact same size. The Tevas are huge, the Birkenstocks are small. I got the 11 and the 12 for the Lems, and I ended up returning the 11s. They were really comfortable. They fit like a glove. They were beautiful, they feel really comfortable and secure in them. But I figured if I'm going to be wearing them in the summer, your feet will start to expand, they'll get hot. And I thought, like, it's already warm right now, but it's not a 95, 100 degree summer day with, baking rock stone outside for a long walk kind of thing. So I figured in those temperatures, I'd want something with a little bit more space, so I kept the 12s. Part of the reason I mentioned that too is if you are if you're kind of going to get a couple sizes and see which one works the best. I had no idea that they partnered with a company called Happy Returns. Super simple. They just basically send you a QR code. You go to like a FedEx store or I think there's a nail salon near me that accepts them. But you go in, they scan the code, they stick it in a bag, and then they process your refund. So it's a really pain-free and immediate way of getting a couple things and then returning what you don't need. The first thing I want to talk about is the sole of the shoe, meaning the bottom of the shoe, though I imagine it has a very lovely sole as well. Out of the box, the actual first thing I noticed when I had them on is that, and I'm guessing this, is that the sole is supposed to mimic a human foot because the heel is actually slightly cupped. And standing on like a floor or any other flat surface, but most floors tend to be flat, Unless I was standing at a very specific point of my heel, I actually felt a little bit off balance. Like, I'm like, ooh, they're not quite that secure feeling. They're feeling a little, just a little weird, a little off. And I'm saying this just in case that you get them and you're immediately like, oh God, no, I'm going to hate these. I did end up wearing them outside on some grass, on some dirt, and then I found that actually that's a lot more comfortable having the cup effect. Instead of having, I guess, the ball of your foot on a flat sole, it's the curved ball of your foot on a curved sole, and it feels like there's a lot more support now around my heel, which I can only imagine is going to be super helpful for things like walking, trail walking. I don't run, hiking, just long walks where things, I think when you get tired, your feet start to sort of feel a little bit like they're kind of starting to fall apart a little bit. I can imagine the extra support in the cupping of the heel does feel better. But I mostly wanted to bring that up in case you immediately tried them on, or even in a store somewhere and you thought like, oh God, I'm gonna hate this when I get it out. I felt that it actually went more supportive. And now that I've worn them for a few miles, it's flattened that out a little bit, so I don't get that same uneasy effect. For the rest of the sole, it is quite thin. They also do the zero drop just like all their other shoes, which I think is less than 1 millimeter between the height of the heel and the height of the toe. So it's a fairly flat sole that you're walking on. But there's not much there as well as far as padding or as far as cushioning. It's just an insole. I can imagine like a thick piece of interfacing, and then, or even part of this mesh, and then the actual sole itself. There's probably, I don't know shoe making, so there's probably something else involved, but it's quite thin when you squeeze it. And I find that it's actually really still comfortable. Although there isn't much cushioning, there isn't much padding, I don't find that when I step on sharp rocks or certain cobblestones, I don't find that it's painful. I don't find that it's causing any actual damage. I know that some of my other shoes, when I really wear away the soles, it does hurt a little bit. It does feel like, I can only take them now on certain, like I can't go hiking with certain shoes once I've really started to worn out the sole, because it does start to hurt. So for now, I actually quite like that it's a really nice thickness. I can't feel the sharpness of things, but as far as like twigs, cracks, cobblestones, anything with a little texture, anything that's a little unbalanced, uneven on the ground, I can feel it. So I like the fact there's a lot of sort of information being transferred between my foot and the ground, basically between the sole. I don't feel like I'm losing a lot of information, I guess, to keep up this analogy. I know that when I'm hiking in shoes that have a thicker sole, like Merrell's, I hiked in Merrell Moabs for a while. They have quite a thick sole, and I've felt that, well, it was really comfortable at the beginning, because I'm like, I could walk through anything in these shoes and I wouldn't feel it. I also noticed that I was putting my weight on things that couldn't actually bear my weight, whether it be rocks or mud, or sometimes there's a log that was starting to rot, but in my shoe it felt really comfortable. And I didn't realize until I put weight on it. But with these, I'm hoping, I haven't actually worn them yet, because there's a lot of more of that information sort of there and available, I'll be able to feel a little bit more. Sort of like, again, when I'm hiking, I rarely, if ever, hike, barefoot. But walking around barefoot, I can tell when a lot better when things are loose, when things are uneven, or when things might give under my weight. So I'm hoping these shoes will sort of go in the same direction. Moving on from the sole is the upper of the shoe, comprised of two parts, mesh and what they call, I think they call it vegan microfiber or vegan micro suede. The entire shoe is vegan, which does just mean plastic. If that's a consideration for you, then they are vegan. I own the other shoes I own basically have leather bits, almost all of them except the Tevas. And there are definitely some benefits to leather as far as longevity, as far as repair, as far as you can really keep leather shoes going for as long as you take care of them. It really is hard to wear them away when you're hydrating them properly, when you're taking care of them properly, With this, I'm a little nervous that the more I wear them, they are just going to get worn away to a point where there's not much one can do about it. However, one of the benefits I feel like with sort of plastic, for lack of a better word, is that it won't shrink when it gets wet and then dries out. And that's one of the biggest things I was looking for a pair of shoes to wear in the summer or the spring or the fall, but most of the summer. It's right now it's a consideration when it comes down to things like which sandals to wear, because the Birkenstocks I own, if they get wet, it's just like, they're practically ruined. So I have to look at the weather every day versus the Tevas, which I can wear pretty much anywhere and they'll take a beating. I wanted to get a pair of shoes that were the same way. I could just wear them rain or shine. I could, jump in puddles with them. I could wear them to the beach and they get a little wet. It's okay. And that's, again, mainly because it's made up of plastic, which once it dries, it shouldn't shrink too much, if at all. And the rest of it is mesh, supposed to be breathable. I guess we'll see. I'm not entirely sure yet. I will say I am happy though, because the other thing I was looking for in a shoe was something that if it did get wet inside, it would be able to dry out a lot easier. And whether that's from me washing the shoe or just wearing the shoe, again, splashing around in puddles and in fountains. I spent the last couple summers in Rome. There are fountains everywhere, and a lot of people kind of like to stick their feet in the fountains, not the nice ones, like these little water fountains. It's like illegal to stick your feet in the nice ones. But you get your feet wet and it kind of cools you down. So I did kind of want like a pair of shoes that in theory, they could get wet and it wasn't the end of the world. Very quickly on the laces and the tongue of the shoe. I very recently learned, obviously, that the length of the laces changes depending on the size of the shoe. One of the reasons I sent back the 11s, in addition to the fact that I thought that when my feet got a little hot, it would be a little bit uncomfortable in the shoe, is that the laces were a little short and the tongue wasn't as wide as I'd like it to be. I felt that basically when my foot was in the shoe, the tongue was already coming up over the edge of the shoe rather than being tucked inside. Even with these shoes, I find that the laces aren't as long as I'd like them to be. And that's just especially for when, sometimes especially like kind of late in the evenings or the summers, when I've had a day of walking around and my feet are a little sore, but I still want to wear sneakers, I like to really loosen the laces until I'm just wearing them almost as like slip-ons or like a boat shoe, right? Like something really comfortable, really easy. And I find that with these, I can only get like this much left in the shoelace of a double knot once they're pretty tight on my feet. So I am not super confident with how it will feel loosened, when they basically I'm wearing them out. However, I am kind of curious to see what will happen, just because I could always be wrong, and I can always change the shoelaces if they end up being too short. Lastly, on the color, I went with the gray. They do have black and I think blue with a white sole. I think they have green, but it's more of like an army green than like a not army green, for lack of a better explanation. I found that it is pretty true to what the image is online. However, I was kind of hoping, I don't know why, between the color and the shape of the shoe, it's not like it's not a very fashionable shoe. And this is not a huge concern, but again, I know that in the one bag community, there's always, especially like on Reddit or other websites, there's always people asking like, what is like a shoe that I can wear to like a nice event, like an art show, but then I can also wear it running in the morning, or I can wear it to a business dinner in the evening, something like that. And there are not many shoes like that. It seems to be what looks good in the evening isn't necessarily the same shoe that's best for running or that's best for hiking. So while I really enjoy these, I don't really go to these events. Again, I keep saying this in other videos, I'm not going to nice events, but I like the idea that I might one day go to nice events, and I don't know if this shoe will be appropriate there. If it's just a business dinner, this might be fine. If you're like, going somewhere for a business dinner, if it's an overnight kind of trip or a weekend trip, this is probably just fine, especially in the black. It's a nice all-around shoe, but if it's anything nicer than that, I would still recommend bringing another pair of shoes with you. With all that being said, I'm really excited to kind of keep using these, keep trying them out. My other shoes have like 1,000 miles on them, probably a little bit more. Honestly, I do walk a lot. And like I said, these are only about 6 or 7 miles in, so I'm really excited to see where it goes. As I mentioned, I'm really happy with the sole already. I'm curious to see how that'll develop, if it'll get, if as I wear it away, it'll get painful and make me susceptible to things like sharp rocks, or if it'll stay pretty sturdy. And I am curious to see how the uppers will react, both to just getting wet and dried, as well as just a bit of abuse. Because again, they're just glued on. They're not sewn on or anything like that. And that is one of the things failing on my other Lems, is that the sole and the upper are becoming unglued, which again, I mean, that's something, a little shoe glue, anyone can fix it. So that's not a huge worry, but I am curious to see how this will develop going forward. More than likely, I'll have another video out probably in August or September about these shoes, giving an actual review on how I liked them, how they performed, what started failing, what didn't, and whether or not I still recommend them. But as for now, I'm super happy with them, especially because I got them on sale for like 20% off. So I can't complain. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you watch the next one.